You're listening to the Business Mindset by RSC Podcast. Episode 5 is about the myth that you can save money by having one person do multiple jobs.
Hello and welcome. We are a group of global business coaches and consultants. We operate independently, but share the same vision, mission, and methodology. Combined, we have more than 100 years of shared experience and collective best practices amongst the RSC affiliates. All of our work is centered on building organizations that operate with repeatable processes and structures. This allows business owners both to replace themselves from having to work in their business, and if they choose to grow their business as well. We've got a 8-part series, and in this episode, we're going through business myths we see a lot of owners and our clients fall into. It's the idea that you can repurpose an employee. Robert, I'll have you explain this a little bit more, where the assumption happens and what is the myth.
What happens is that companies grow and it takes work to find people, train people, develop people. And what happens is people feel that after a while, when somebody's working with somebody else, they're related enough. And because job is simple enough, you can actually have one person do 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and 4 jobs. While it is true, what they forget to do is they have to train people. So you take a secretary and says, look, I'm going to teach you sales. What people understand is to be any position, it takes time and training. So what happens to small business owners is they say, I can take a secretary, have her work 30 hours a week as secretary, 10 hours work marketing. But what happens is she does less work as secretary, and also she does a very bad job of selling, and as a result, owners get upset. And they try to save money by repurposing people without training, without support, without documentation, without education, without consent. So a lot of times what happens in the business world is there's a lot of failures in that regards. As a rule, it's not good to take somebody who's fully trained and put them in a position they're not trained for. What a lot of people do is they pay more people, so they annually they get a raise or whatnot, and they go like, well, since I'm paying them more, I should get more out of them. So they give them more jobs. And then the experience for the worker is, I've earned my extra pay and they give me more work. And not only that, they're giving new work without training. So it is very bad to simply throw more work at people and give them jobs they're not good at. Because what most people forget is there's time for development that's required. So that's what happens to the most small businesses. They're trying to save money. But in trying to save money, they destroy an organization because they put incompetent people for the jobs. In the old days, the concept is called Peter principle. You raise them up to the level they're incompetent at, or you position them into a position they're not good at.
That was a really great description. And I think it goes into another myth that I'm seeing, that owners think that an owner is a special kind of person. They're really, I would say, a lot of times I see them being overachievers, or they're interested in multiple areas. They can do multiple, maybe they're jack of all trades, but maybe not a master of one, but they can really pick up quite a few things, and they can wear many hats as an owner. And when they hire people, I see them being a little bit disappointed that the people that they're hiring can't do that. They can't repurpose as well as they do. And it's a big myth, because if everybody could do that, and if everybody was interested in ownership and wearing multiple hats, you wouldn't have employees to hire. Because if that employee was as skilled or interested or as experienced maybe in that particular field that the owner is experienced in, they'd be running their own company. And you wouldn't have an employee, you would have competition. With repurposing comes these unrealistic expectations of people, of expecting them to perform well above any sort of training, which you mentioned already.
Right. The other mistake owners make is that they either think they're irreplaceable or they're completely replaceable, and they want to get paid for doing nothing instead of managing the overall flow of the organization. So there's this myth that you own something, eventually you don't own it, you don't do anything, but what you're really managing is the flow of the things in the organization from point A to point B. You're accountable if things go wrong, it's your shirt. So you're getting paid for a guarantee of something. And what's really hard for owners is to listen to advice of a competent manager or competent consultant or people, because they are individuals. They experience themselves being busy or not busy. They don't understand that each category has their own experts. So so you could say that owners also go through levels of training and development as they grow, because they have to.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
said on both ends.
And so people are not replaceable. Yeah.
No.
People are the treasures. They're not
Mhm.
easily replaceable. Ruby is not diamond, and diamond is not gold, and gold is not silver.
Mhm.
They're all different categories.
I remember when I was taking some psychology courses back in university, one of the things that was found is that people tend to overestimate how many people agree with their own opinions. And sort of similarly, a lot of people tend to have an overestimation that their workers can do things the way they do, have the same thinking. They think that, oh, well, it's obvious they should do it the way I do it. What's wrong with them? Why don't they do the task the same way I would? Right? Well, they're different people. They have different thought process, different opinions. They don't know what you do. They can't read your mind. So you got to tell them, you got to train them. Also, part of that is sometimes the owners think, oh, well, it's just common sense to do it the way I do. Well, apparently they think differently. So got to instruct them and train them. And so there are a few business owners who I've worked with where I've had to reset their expectations of people, because otherwise they're just getting upset and blaming their employees when it's not really their employees' fault. It's just different people have different points of view. Different people have different knowledge.
Mhm. Yeah. That's such a great point. I would encourage, I think a great view to have as a mindset is that to remain maybe possibly humble or curious. It may not be the case. And what I'm saying is, if someone is not performing or doing a task quite like you want them to, the assumption shouldn't be that they're not capable of it, they don't know it, right? The assumption could be that you may need a training as an owner to manage people, which I find is more often like I've had a huge learning curve in training and managing people, just psychologically and emotionally, like not even skill set wise, because I've never done it before. I've had to remind myself often that if something's not quite happening quite like I wanted to, it's not necessarily on the other side. It might not be a good fit, right? Like that person that I thought would be a great fit for that role might not be a good fit for that role. That could be one thing. So I think remaining curious and more solution oriented, which is a lot easier said than done, because emotions are like sometimes often the first thing to come up rather than a solution or a system or a process. It's not necessarily our go-to.
That's something I've had to work on for myself, because by default, I used to have a high level of contempt and blame for other people. Just a lot of annoyance and frustration. Like, okay, well, no, that's just my opinion. They aren't doing what I want them to do, but they're doing what they're doing. But it's all about resetting my expectations and having compassion for people, having to look at myself in terms of, okay, well, if I don't like what they're doing, what am I going to do about it? I could either just accept the way that they do things, the way they are, and stop complaining or stop being upset about it, or maybe I can do something to adjust their behavior or the way they do things, which could be training or having documented process and procedures, explain to them how I want things done. Or only if things really don't work out, the person's really unwilling to do things the way they need to be done, then it'd be replacing them.
Also, the problem is once the person is fully trained, it's hard to untrain that person to a next level. So a lot of times salespeople get trained one particular way. Now they might still be a salesperson. There's a new technology, new process, new know-how, and you'll find it really hard to untrain people.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the issues that people come across is people don't change once they're set.
Mm-hmm.
IBM makes great salespeople, but once they're trained by IBM way, they may go to other companies, but they may still follow the IBM way. Once you've been in the military, you will change and become an actor or whatever, but you'll find certain code of conduct or behavior is in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are young and when they get trained in a particular way, they tend to stay that way. So as an owner, you got to be responsible for how you train them and what did you turn them into.
I was thinking that it reminded me of a short clip of an interview I saw with Arnold Schwarzenegger because at some point he was in the military. So he's in charge of discipline with raising his children. And he took certain things from the military and applied it to teaching his children. Like, okay, well, so by 5 years old, they could do their own laundry. They could iron, fold their clothes, make their iron because, he had to take care of himself. They go skiing. And after one run down the hill, they want hot chocolate and they're crying. And I said, there will be no hot chocolate. We're going to do 4 runs. And then after that, there'll be hot chocolate. They're not happy then, but then later on, they appreciated certain aspects about it and enjoy skiing and how they're better at skiing than all their other friends.
Yeah, military is a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
So
I think,
Arnold's kids are very military, huh?
yeah.
I don't know if he went that far, but he took certain things he learned from the military and used it for, I guess, training his children in certain things.
Yeah, that's so anecdotal. And I think important to know that for better or for worse, if you do your job as an owner and you position somebody in what they're skilled at, something they enjoy, something they want to do long term, that gives them the kind of career that they want, it's going to be really hard they're not going to change, right? For better or for worse. They're going to be there, and it'll be really reliable. If you want to invest in, add new software to as an owner, you're going to be like, oh, everybody's going to be on board. Everybody's going to be so happy with this is going to make it so much easier. Well, it's going to probably make it easier for the owner, and then every employee is not going to want to do it. So I think it's always when it comes to having an organization with people that are definitely is worth it, and it really gives a lot of the benefits that I think a lot of owners would like or covet. It comes with challenges. And one of the mindsets that would support, I think, in training, because first of all, it's money, it's time, it's training yourself to train people. All of those things are I would say they're painful. Okay, they're painful to do because you're paying somebody, you're adding more work to yourself, you're training yourself. That person, you have a fear of maybe they might leave, even if you've invested in them. There's a lot of risk in there.
No, they will
And
leave.
it's right, they will leave. And so it's hard to see the reward. And I can see a lot of owners stop at this
Well,
kind
at
of
some
point.
point, usually,
Yeah,
not immediately.
even if they get the best case scenario, they will die in their job, and they will have been with you for 40 years,
If they don't want to
50
change, like
years.
if you built it well, yeah. But
Well, hold on a second. But what you have to do is you have to build adaptations to that. I work with senior VP of Morgan Stanley Beverly Hills. I was given a guy who managed $50 million in asset, but was approaching he was 63 years old at the time. At the time, he didn't want to use cell phones. He didn't want to use email. So, but he made a great sales strategy in terms of selling stocks. So we gave him a secretary. The secretary would print all the emails every day, and he would go through the 3-inch files of emails on paper and respond. The secretary will respond back. So if there's somebody valuable enough, you will adjust the whole organization around that person.
mm-hmm.
Anyway,
True.
sorry to interrupt.
No, there's so many nuances, and and we've had Robert, you especially have had so many experiences in people scaling and growing and building on organizations. So I really love your examples, especially that those firsthand examples. What I was going to say is about the mindset, and this is something that I learned as being part of RSC, is you want to you want to have a mindset of long term rather than short term when dealing with hiring and training and growing your organization. Because if you look at it as a day, as a week, an employee doing something that doesn't work will maybe impact your bottom line that week or something like that. And when your profits are not that big, you could have an emotional reaction to it. But when you look at your company as, you know, a 30-year endeavor, a 40-year endeavor, and you kind of put yourself in the 20-year or the 30-year, is what happened really going to matter? And in 30, 40 years, you're looking at building a solid foundation, and how you build that foundation with the first few employees, they're going to teach the other employees that work culture as well. So the time that you put in, maybe getting to know somebody, training them, training yourself is only going to be an investment, like a long-term investment in yourself and the company, which might be hard to see in the moment. In the moment, it may occur as, hey, it's hard work. There's very little reward, and it's so demanding of me, and it costs money, and it doesn't help me. It could look like that. But when you look at it as long term, it's just a part of the company's process that it needs to go through, and it gets better.
Especially when a business owner has waited till they're overwhelmed and then, okay, I need to hire somebody and now train them. Oh, I'm already overwhelmed, and now need to put in extra time and effort into helping this person. So yeah, if there is a long-term view, then ideally they plan out when to hire people before they reach that point.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to hire too early or too late. Yeah, and there's also that mental effort with learning or adjusting to a new company where it's like, okay, well, I used to do it this way. Now this new company wants it done a different way. I need to let go of my old habits and learn a different way if they really insist. There is a resistance to putting in that effort. And then also management actually supporting the employee and through management and training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but there is no training and development. There is no career ladder in companies anymore. Without that, it makes life hard for. You don't have you come here, you get trained this way. You move up here, you train the people below you. There's no such process. Also, there is no training and development department, and there is no budget for training development. It's really interesting because things that used to exist for granted in the 40s and 50s, 60s, and even 70s are gone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like an ancient history. So what you see is a lot of organization that got put together simply to service customers and make the upper management, successful and rich. But they
Mm-hmm.
forget all the things they require to do it over long term. So the
Mm-hmm.
companies have become things that you create, you produce results with, and you disappear. It used to be that you built companies that lasted for a long time. By having long view, you can go through 10 people, lose 4 people to other companies, 6 people you develop, and eventually end up with 2, but it's all built into the mathematics over
Mm-hmm.
20, 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But since nobody's thinking that much, companies are simply props that you build and use for a while and disappear.
Mm-hmm. Or they get
What
spoiled.
did companies used to do in the 40s and 50s that they no longer do anymore?
They bring people in, literally off college, put them on a junior management training program, build them into supervisors, then into managers, build a huge rows of managers, and from there you send them to school and you develop into executives. So by the time you're executive, your company is paid for your MBA or specialization, and you've agreed to be with the company for X number of years. So every individual from lowest level to highest level get invested upon. The cost of their employment is not simply their paycheck, but something that's hidden in the background, which is their health insurance or something of a health benefit and training benefit. It's all calculated into budget.
Hmm.
When you look at the budget of the old, it's very different.
Hmm. It's very difficult.
Without that, it's really hard. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, don't apologize. It is very difficult. That's great, great explanation. And I recently watched because I haven't been
Yeah.
an employee in a very long time, but sometimes I hear people that applying for jobs, and right now the recommendation is instead of asking for a raise necessarily, is just to go to another position and look for another position in a couple of years because you get paid way more.
Hmm.
So it sounds
Hmm.
like the way that companies are built, it's almost very common that employees will just leave, and it's more common to see employees spend only 2, 3, 4 years, maybe 10 is a lot, but the idea of someone spending 25 years or 20 years in one organization is very, very uncommon where it used to be.
Yeah, well,
Right.
when there's no training and development, then how do you advance? You go to
How do
another
you raise
company
family?
and then go to another company again, and sometimes they end up back at their the first company, but just at a way higher level.
Yes.
America, Canada used to be land of companies where budgeting was done in such a way to account for human development. So chances are you became middle manager or senior middle manager or lower level executive. You're expected to get married, but and they would say it's for your emotional support, whatever. But the reality is that's when you could afford to get married, right? So it was built into the nuances were built into it,
Hmm.
and the trip cost, secretary, it was all built in. But what happened over the 80s and 90s, they figured out why do we need secretaries? Let them do it themselves. Let's cut costs here. Why do we need R&D? Why don't we just make more profit? Why do we need train development? We can just hire people from elsewhere, from different state, different country. Once the upper management or the board started increasing profit at the cost of the infrastructure and people,
Hmm.
the whole landscape of business changed.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Why
like,
do we
why
need
do
a
we
physical
build things when we
location?
can merge and
Why do we
say it again?
provide computers?
Yeah,
Why do we provide computers and hardware when they can just have their own? Why do we provide a physical location for them to come in when they can just work from home? It's like wherever you can, you're cutting costs. So.
yeah, cut cost.
Hmm.
But you take away permanence, you take away the growth pattern, you take away expansion and growth.
Hmm.
And then you create owners who hates paying employees
Hmm.
because they are told as an owner you're supposed to make more and more money, not have a salary, have a fixed revenue for yourself, and then invest the rest. You're not told that. So what happens is owners just overspend for themselves and they don't have anything else.
Hmm.
So the organization never becomes big.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's an opportunity for well-built companies with loyal employees, with thoughtful ladders, with training and development. Like there's a lot of opportunity now for those companies because companies that are done that way and built that way could really compete much better, and have a lot more
I
resilience
think so.
than some of these kind of lean-tos, I would call them. That's what they're built. Like they're built by, just profit and, really taking advantage and trying to grow as quickly, sell the for the most that it could possibly be worth. But we know how to build
Hmm.
a company to inflate the price or the look, or to make it look almost like when you do real estate, you restore a house, you kind of know what things to build to raise the price. You
Right.
could really inflate a company's value very quickly, and that's like a certain way to do it. But it won't last long term. I would argue some of the most profitable people in the world, they've had companies that last generations, and those are very sturdy
Hmm.
companies, and they were built earlier. So I think it's still possible to build companies like that.
I think so. We're going through a squeeze right now for the next 6 months to a year globally, economically. But
Hmm.
once we go through that, I think it would be fashionable to have employees again. and fashion to expand in a faster way.
I love how you said that.
Because
Yeah.
right now, well, yeah, it's just that when you're going through recession, depression, squeeze uncertain the economy, and all not, it's good to have small companies, 1 people, 2 people, 3 people at most. But
Mhm.
once that cycle is done and the new spring comes, you want to take
Mhm.
advantage and grow as much as you can. As an organization, it's smart to prepare during end of winter. So end of
Mhm.
winter is coming for us in about 3-4 months. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Amazing episode, gentlemen. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure to be here with you and have this discussion.
Mhm.
For our viewers, please stay tuned for our next business myth. Hopefully, you're enjoying the podcast so far. We would love your feedback. Leave comments, send us messages. Let us know what you think. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The Business Mindset by RSC Podcast is brought to you by Robert Chun at rscbusinessgroup.com, Aurelia Usita at rscsales.ca, and Brandon Ling at rscbga.com. Music is provided by Davey Harris at daveyharris.com.